Okay, let's go, guys. So good morning, everyone. My name is Luis Campos. I am a GTM lead for Data and AI Governance for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I'm going to be joined on stage by my colleague Leo, who's the principal sales specialist architect for data governance as well. And later on, we're going to have the generous testimony from Harry joining us from BMS to tell us all about their data journey in terms of data governance. Now, you all could have chosen to be in so many sessions. There's so much stuff happening in reInvent, but you chose to be here. I would like to thank you and recognize your presence to be here. And also, if you're here today, means that you are interested in knowing more about a business data catalog. Probably you already built one, or you are about to build one, or you want to migrate from someone. Something must going on to justify your presence here. I'm just giving this heads up in case you think you're in the wrong room. So if you would like to leave, no problem. Okay, so let's get started. So we have a pre-packed agenda for you today. I'm going to give a brief introduction in terms of the strategic importance of a business data catalog and how does it play out within the strategy of a company. And after that, Leo is going to bring the building blocks to build that solution within AWS and using some of the things that we have announced yesterday. And some of the things that probably Swami is going to be deep diving at the same time as us. He's going to show a demo. It's going to be exciting to see what was announced yesterday right in action today. So take notes, and if you would like to ask questions at the end, Leo's going to be here. And then the voice of the customer is going to be joined by Harry from Bristol Myers Squibb, who has been working with us on their data governance solution for quite some time. And it's quite exciting to have had Apple yesterday announcing they've been working with us for so long. BMS, the same thing. They have been working with us in data governance, but this is a premiere. It's the first time that Harry comes here on reInvent and talks about that experience. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of archaeology. And one of the most exciting archaeologists in recent 10 years is Sarah Parcak. And what's so special about Sarah is that she realized that the discovery of artifacts could be starting from the sky. So she is the godmother of satellite imagery being used to uncover more and more archaeology artifacts. Now, she has this quote that I think it's very important, it's going to be very relevant for what we're going to be talking about today, which is, in archaeology, context is everything. Objects allows us to reconstruct the past. Now, if we put this parallel in terms of reconstructing the past, and we take this image, for instance, that you could see, it's definitely not real, but could be in a future of 200 years ago. Can you imagine a future civilization looking at this artifact, finding it, uncovering it, and saying, this was probably a goddess from a past civilization. She was the goddess of fire and knowledge. She has a book and she has a flame. There's no context here. So this is kind of what happens when you're starting to do archaeology. You will build as you go. Now let's put this in parallel with data science, right? There are commonalities between archaeology and data science, of course, meaning that the more artifacts you find out, the more rich your context will be. But at the same time, in data science, the more data points you have, the more data points you collect, the more data sets you bring over to your sandbox, the richer will be. Everyone can agree with this, right? Now, but there's an interesting thing that separates archaeology and data science, which is, in archaeology, the discovery builds the catalog. There's no one saying, oh, you're going to find this in 10 years. No, there's no catalog. People don't know what they're finding. Sometimes they find something, and with using technologies, they'll say this was from 5,000 years ago, and then they find something else, and they start realizing that maybe their first assessment was not right. So there's no catalog. Whereas in data science, and I'm using data science as an umbrella term, right? So could be used data management. Everything that is scientific around managing data is not be able to do without a catalog. Because if you want to find the data that you need to test your hypothesis or build your use case or build your application, you need to have a catalog. So the discovery is enabled by the catalog, okay? Now, I've been in this industry for more decades than I would like to admit, and I've seen customers from probably not 5 continents, but at least 3 continents. And I must tell you that some people manage their data as an archaeology site. They go with the flow. And that's exactly what we're here to tackle today. And context is the first thing that I've started with the quote from Sarah Parcak. And in order to have context, you need to have a common language, so people will understand what they're talking about, even if they belong to different areas or if they have a subdivision of the company. There's got to be a common language. And I'm going to take you through some things that you probably all already know, but I'm just going to level set here so we can move on to the next part. Now, a common language needs agreed definitions of the terms that you're using in that particular context. And in this case, we're talking about a glossary or vocabulary. So that definition must exist before you even start cataloging anything. Now, of course, once you start having glossary terms to define the things so people would understand what a certain term is and defining it in the specific context or domain, you'll have to create a hierarchy. So something belongs to some part of this category, which is a subcategory, so on and so forth. Think about biology, right? So think about the species and the subspecies and all of that. In fact, the Swedish botanist was the first one to create this taxonomy context, or concept of the taxonomy, which is the hierarchy of glossary terms. Now, if you start here, you're doing fine. You're doing great, because once you're going to need this information later, once you start cataloging, you will probably uncover that you're going to need more glossary terms and you need to organize your taxonomy in a different way. But things need different definitions, and entities will need to be defined formally, and I would say probably technically, so they can be managed electronically or digitally. You can have concepts defined by glossary terms, you can have hierarchies defined by taxonomy, but computers don't work with definitions, right? They work with entities, they work with attributes, they work with relationships, and that's where the ontology comes in. So if this sounds like I'm giving you a class, let me give you an example, okay? So social security number, and I'm going to use, for instance, the social security number format from the US, could be social security number from any country in the world or your own country. But an example of glossary terms that would be associated with this piece of data would be PII data, highly sensitive, or private data. So you would associate this to the social security number data piece. Now, the taxonomy would belong to data classification. I'm classifying this data as highly sensitive. And in terms of ontology, I would define the format. I would define where it sits in terms of entities and what's its role. Like in this case, a AAA for area, double G for geographic location, and then a serial number for the North American 9-digit format. And it's the unique attribute for the entity called citizen. Right? That's what defines a citizen in the US. And it's related to, for instance, other entities or processes like background checks. So all these things will be defined by the ontology of that database. Again, looks like I'm lecturing you, but this is going to be useful. Now, the importance of a business data catalog is such that it all starts with context. You have a set of unique data points where you start with. I've actually lost track of the amount of times that my wife starts a sentence and it finishes off at some point with a question. And from some magical fairy dust, I kind of missed the first few sentences. I don't know what got me. And so there's a question that I need to answer. I don't want to give it away that I didn't listen to the question, but I don't want to reply something that doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of stuck here. If this domestical situation sounds familiar to you, imagine working on a company where you're being asked stuff that looks like the domestical situation that I'm describing. And you're like, where's the data? Where's the context? Like, I need to do some discovery here. So your unique data points that you start with could and should be enriched by a business data catalog that will provide the broader context for that. And once you have that, that's when the discovery starts. Now, it's not that your job description says that you need to handle situations where you don't have all the information, that this needs to be a daily practice, right? So you need to be given the tools to do that discovery in a more standardized way. Now you have a richer context. The context is richer, means that you have more options. And once you have more options, you can start to create something which is quite magical, which is the association between the action and the outcome and the result, and create that magical loop where you realize, okay, I've got a whole process here. This is the data that I need, so I don't need discovery now. Once I do operationalize this process, I have this data that I need to start with. This is the action that needs to be taken in order to achieve this outcome. But these things don't happen like that from the start, right? It needs to go through this process of discovery. So how many types of catalogs are there? It's an interesting question. We get asked this a lot. When we start talking about a business data catalog, people usually think about a technical catalog. But I'm going to take you by the hand today in an example that it's non-technological, so once Leo comes and uses more technological terms, you will get the parallel. So a technology or a technical data catalog, if you remember my definitions, will have the ontology of all those entities. And we all know that those are the definitions of our tables, our relationships between the tables, the attributes, the data types, the length, everything. So all of that will be your technical data and the technical metadata that's associated with that data. Now imagine, for instance, gold as an element, aurorium, and gold will also have some technical metadata, like for instance the atomic number or atomic weight. That does not mean that if I work in the jewelry business that I'm going to use those terms. I need to add a new layer of metadata. For instance, a business data catalog will bring the glossary and the taxonomy specific to define something that was created based on that. Of course, we cannot talk with each other because this is silent disco, but imagine something that's made out of gold. Wedding ring, or any kind of ring for that matter. So it doesn't need to be a wedding, okay? So now we're talking about the design of the ring. Now we're talking about the size of the ring. And now we're talking about the carat number of the ring. It goes from 10 to 24. And these are things that are not relevant in the technical catalog. But the technical catalog is very much relevant for this matter. No one would like to have a golden ring made out of plastic, right? Or copper. It's a gold ring. So you expect to have the qualities of gold, okay? So if we take this a little bit further, let's see, for instance, your data sources. And your data sources could either be managed or unmanaged. You're going to see a lot of this, but we'll come back to that. The first step is for our technical producers to catalog that data. The more automatic, the better. So that's why I've talked about managed cataloging. Sometimes you have to catalog it manually. And that's probably the role of the business producer of data sets or data assets that's going to bring that metadata curation layer. It's going to take the gold and give the characteristics of the ring, okay? Those are not relevant for the technical metadata, but now they are very much relevant for the business part. And once that is curated, And I'm saying curated because there's got to be a lot of back and forth in terms of this metadata curation. It's not final. Once it's final, it's ready to be shared, and then you have your enterprise data catalog that now will have your business consumers and your technical consumers. They will both see the ring and the gold. Okay? Depends on what they would like to see. But if they would like to have context about something more than the gold, they will have the ring size and carat number, etc. So in terms of your data set, you start with the technical definitions and then you layer all those concepts around from glossary. Okay? Could be this is, for instance, a social security number, but then you could layer all other processes on top and definitions on top of that attribute. Now, still on the golden ring example, just to finish off, imagine you're in the jewelry industry example and you have business consumers. These would be the people on the B2C area of selling the rings. So they would be going to the catalog looking for information about stock supply and design categories and carat values and all these attributes that we saw. While at the same time, down at the factory of rings, which is made of artisans and people working, you need to make sure that you understand what's the pipeline coming, what are people buying, and if you have enough people to do, if you have enough raw materials to do all that. So different users will see different things or will consume different things, but the catalog will be one as a whole, providing that powerful context. Now, to dive deeper into this and to give you a more understanding on how you implement your business data catalog, let me call on stage my colleague Leo. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leo, go ahead.
Hey folks, good morning. Can you hear me? Good, nice. So, thank you, Luis. So yeah, as Luis mentioned, I'm going to cover the technical aspect of the different catalogs, the technical catalog and the business catalog. And also, we have a demo. So it's not only theory, you're going to see everything in action, okay? So my name is Leonardo Gomez. I'm a principal solution architect here at AWS. And yeah, let's start it. So let's start with technical users, okay? Technical users, the things that you need or the metadata that they need is more related to the data itself. What I mean by this is that the information that you need is partitions, okay, partition information, data types, indexes, and so on. Okay, so you don't need to understand what is the business case of the data. You need to understand how the data works in order to optimize it, in order to share it. Okay, for that we have a Glue data catalog. Okay. Has been around for more than 5 or 10 years. It is a managed service. You don't need to do anything. And it's going to help you to catalog your structured and semi-structured data. Okay? So how it works is very simple. Okay? You have your different sources. You have Amazon S3, you have RDS, Redshift, and other sources. It could be also third-party vendor sources. And we offer the option of having a Glue crawler. There is a process that is going to harvest the metadata from those sources for you, okay? And it's going to create the tables of metadata in the Glue catalog, okay? There, as I mentioned before, you are going to see the information like column information, data types, partitions, and so on. Also, you have the option to run data quality on top of that table. The thing that we're going to do here is to generate data quality scores. Okay, remember that you have the data on S3, for example, you have your Glue catalog, okay, that is the metadata about that data, and then on top of that, you can generate data quality scores. So in that case, you are going to have the information about your metadata, your actual data, and also you can see the status of that data. Okay, if you can, your users can consume it, or you need to clean it before that. Okay. So this is how it looks like, okay, in the current Glue console. You can see, for example, general information For example, the input format, in this case is Parquet for this example. You have a schema information, you have a partition information, index information, a file format, you have the option to add descriptions to the columns, okay? But in this case, technical description, something that is going to help a developer, a data engineer, to understand or to give more details about that specific column, okay? Also, data types, you have asset version, and as I mentioned before, you have data quality. Okay, this is just a quick example, but you can have more metadata. Okay, for example, parameters about the table, partitions, and so on. Okay. So now let's talk about business users. Business users are totally different user because they don't care about what is the data type. They don't care about how many partitions we have there. They care about the value that they can get from that information, and they want it fast. Okay, under the hood we have partitions, that's nice, but they don't care. Okay, they want the information that they need, and they want it fast. So, what are the main components that a data catalog, enterprise data catalog should have? Okay, so we are talking about metadata curation. We're going to see that in a minute. We have data lineage, very important. We need to understand from where the data is coming from in order to consume it. Data quality, okay? It doesn't matter if I have a bunch of data. If the data is not good, I'm not going to be able to get any value from it, okay? We have a business glossary. Why? Because I need context, okay? I'm a business user. I need to understand why is that data for, okay? And also metadata forms that are going to allow us to document the data, the asset in the way that we want, okay? You're going to see that later as part of the presentation. And also domains, okay? I need to organize people in different domains, okay? If you have, I don't know, the marketing department, the sales department, the claims department, I would like also to organize them inside of my data catalog, okay? So, what is our solution for enterprise business data catalog? Amazon DataZone has been around for a year now, has been very successful on helping customers to organize their data. We have seen customers that they have built amazing data mesh, to give you an example, well organized, very, very secure, but nobody used them. Why? Because nobody had the chance or the option to see what is part of that data lake. Okay, DataZone, the thing that brings to the table is that visibility on top of your whole data lake. Okay, I can see where all the data assets are located, who the owner is, and you can also directly consume it. Okay, so again, centralizing everything in a single place, in a single UI, in which you can discover all your corporate data is the value that DataZone is adding in this context. Okay, and now we have also Amazon SageMaker data catalog that was announced yesterday. This catalog is powered by DataZone, so all the functionalities that if you are already familiar with DataZone, all the functionalities that DataZone offers are also offered by the SageMaker catalog. Okay, different experience, but in the core functionalities are exactly the same. Okay, so let's talk about business glossaries and metadata forms. Okay, very important. You cannot have a business data catalog without business glossaries and metadata form. Okay? Why? Because here is where you are going to add all the information that your consumer needs to understand, to have more context about that at a specific data asset. Okay? So, what are the components that we offer in DataZone and SageMaker catalog to cover this aspect? Okay? The first thing are the assets. Okay? Assets could be a table, could be a dashboard, could be a machine learning model, could be a GenAI model, and so on. Okay, every single component that you catalog as part of your data catalog or enterprise data catalog is an asset. Okay. Then you have business glossaries. Okay, business glossaries, as I mentioned before, is going to add the context. Okay, so for example, imagine that you have an asset at a table, and you want to add terminology that is going to help your consumers to understand what that data asset is related to, okay? And then metadata forms that are custom forms that are going to help you to document your data in whatever way you want. So you can create your own forms, okay? For example, approver info, or most common queries, or business justification, whatever you want to add in order to offer more context to your data asset, you can do it with metadata forms, okay? Let's see that on details, okay? So here we have, on the right side, we have a table, okay? And we are going to document that table together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I have a business glossary called region, and I have different regions. I have Asia, Americas, and so on. So I can link business glossary, I can link business glossary terms to metadata forms. So the metadata forms that I create, the name is, well, I create two for this example, is sales identifiers and asset ownership. So if you see, I link one business glossary to my metadata form, in this case region, and then I add that metadata form as part of my data asset in order to document it. So how it works, me as a producer, when I'm documenting a data asset, I need to fill out that metadata form that I have in the middle in order to publish it. And that metadata form use information from my business glossary, okay? The second approach is using business glossary terms directly as part of your data asset. So here, in this case, we have data classification, very common example. We have a public, confidential, and so on, and I can go directly and assign a business glossary term to my data asset. The difference between approach number 1 and 2 is that metadata forms, you can make it mandatory, okay? So for me, in order to publish my data asset, I need to fill out the metadata form. Glossary terms, they're optional, okay? And the third one, the same example as before, you have a metadata form, a business glossary that goes directly to the asset. So as you see, when the asset is done, is finished, you are going to see here a combination of data that is coming from the asset itself, plus glossary terms, plus metadata forms, okay? So this is the right way for you in the context of data and the SageMaker catalog to document your data, okay? Or your data assets. So this is how it looks like, okay? So you have your business label or the business name of the asset, glossary terms associated on the top, as you can see there. You have technical metadata, okay, that is coming from the source. That information should be there because we need to understand from where the data is coming from. You have also the metadata forms that I mentioned before as part of your data asset. Okay, don't worry, you're going to see that as part of our demo in a couple of minutes. But as you can see, now you have the two different sides of the different type of catalogs. Okay, the technical one was more oriented to data types, partitions, and so on. This one is more oriented to business context. Okay. So another aspect that is very important as part of our data catalog is data lineage. Okay. Why? As I mentioned before, I need to understand the origin of my data. If I'm going to consume something to generate an important report, for example, I need to be 100% sure that the data is coming from the right source. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to show you a couple of examples based on personas. We have a technical user, in this case, Julia. Okay? Julia is a data engineer, and she needs to perform an impact analysis. What this means is that she needs to change a report or an asset, but she needs to understand what is the impact that change is going to have in the rest of the pipeline. Okay? As you can see here, she can go to the asset that she wants to change and visualize all the consumers that asset has and from where the data is coming from. Okay? This is a more technical use case. If we go now to a more business-oriented use case, we have Susan. Okay, Susan was asked to double-check how the calculation of a specific column was made. Okay, So for regulatory issues, let's call it like that, she has to double check why that number how that number is calculated. So for that, she can go to DataSong or SageMaker catalog, and she can go to the lineage diagram and look where that column was calculated. And actually, if she is technically sufficient enough, she can go and see the code that was used in order to calculate a specific column. Okay, so as you see, two different use cases, technical and business, but the answer comes from the same place, Lineage. Okay, perfect. So now we have data quality. Okay, data quality also very important, as I mentioned before. If the data is, I can have, I don't know, 3 terabytes of data. Perfect. If the data is not good, I'm not going to generate any good results. Okay, so for that, I need good data quality. In DataSong, we have also a good way to offer you data quality because we are fully integrated with a GlueDQ or Glue Data Quality. The way that it works is that you have your Glue table, for example, you run the data quality jobs on top of that data to identify the quality scores, and then DataSong harvests that metadata and publish it as part of the data catalog. Okay, so the good thing is that the technical folks, they can implement those quality rules, okay, and then the business users, as part of their decision process, they can see those scores. And the good thing, and one of my favorite things about this part, is that you are going to see the scores by rules. Okay, if you implement a completeness rule, or I don't know, a value-based rule, or whatever rules you implemented here, you are going to see the score for each of them. And not only that, you can see how the quality score change in a period of time. Okay, what this means is that you can see if the quality score is consistent, and based on that, decide if you want to consume that data asset or not. Okay, again, fully integrated with GlueDQ. Okay, and those rules can be implemented by technical users. Perfect. So let's put everything together. Okay. So how it works? We have on the bottom we have technical users and business user. Technical users, as you already saw, they are going to harvest the technical metadata from the sources using Glue crawlers, for example. This is one of the options. You can do it manually if you want to, but we offer the Glue crawlers to automate that process. And the technical users or the technical owner is going to catalog all that technical metadata in the Glue catalog. Okay, so you can enrich that technical metadata there, as I mentioned before, with partition information, indexes information, and so on. And then and also generate the quality scores, of course. Then, when you have all that information ready, okay, the business users can go to DataSong or SageMaker catalog, and they can go and harvest that technical metadata and enrich that technical metadata with business information. As you saw it before, you have Lineage, you have data quality, you have business glossaries, you have metadata forms. And then is where the data producer, the business data producer, once the asset is well documented, is going to publish it, okay, and is going to share it with the rest of the company, okay? But now imagine this experience. You are a data consumer, okay? You don't know anything about your data lake, but you need to get information, or you need to create an analysis of your sales. To give you an example, you go to your enterprise business data catalog, you search for sales. You are going to see all the data, all the assets related to sales. You identify one that you like. When you click there, okay, you are going to see information about the summary of that asset, the use case, the most common queries that you can run on top of that asset, business glossary terms, lineage, quality. You are going to see all the information that you need in order to say, look, I'm going to consume this because the quality is good and I trust the source. Okay, and everything centralized in a single place. So it's a marketplace experience. I go, I search for what I want, and I subscribe to it. Okay, and just with that, you are going to be able to generate whatever analysis on top of it. But again, having all the information that you need, okay, all the metadata, all the business context that you need in order to identify that you really need to, that is the asset that you want to consume, okay? So I'm going to stop talking about theory and let's go with a demo, okay? Perfect. Okay, so we have two users, okay? We have Leonardo, he's the data owner, okay, the data producer. And we have Susan, the data consumer, okay? So Leonard is going to produce data assets, is going to add business metadata, is going to publish a data asset, and is going to approve the subscription request. And Susan, she's going to search, okay, and discover the data asset, the experience that I just described, and is going also to subscribe to those data assets, and is going to consume those data assets, okay? We're going to cover these use cases as part of the demo. So let's go. Okay, we're going to, for this demo, we're going to use the new UI, okay? That is part of the new SageMaker data catalog. So let's go with Leonardo. He's going, as I mentioned before, produce the data assets. So here you can see the home page, okay? You have to select your project, sales, and then go to data, okay? On the top, you can see your business catalog. On the bottom, you can see the business catalog. Sorry, the technical catalog on the top, the business on the bottom. So here you have all your inventories of your data assets, okay? I'm going to select total revenue. That is the asset that we're going to document today. So the first thing that I'm going to do is click Generate Descriptions. Why? Because we offer a functionality to generate descriptions using GenAI, okay? So I click there, and the thing that is going to happen is that it's going to generate a use case description and also a summary of the asset. You can edit it if you want to, or actually reject it. In this case, we accept it. Also, we can add a README section, okay? Custom README section as part of your data asset. I just put there a sample query, okay, that you can run on top of that asset. Now, I'm assigning glossary terms, okay, related to the nature of this asset, okay? In this case, this asset is related to sneaker sales, okay? Here you can see the metadata forms that comes with technical information. For example, the bucket in which the data is located and so on. Now, I'm going to add a metadata form, okay, a custom metadata form, very simple example. Who was the business approver for the publication of this asset? I'm putting the date, I'm putting the name of the approver, and the level of access, okay? So as you can see, all the information is documented. Also here, as you remember, the GenAI functionality not only generates information at the asset level, also generates metadata at the column level, okay? Every single column of that data asset is going to be documented, okay? Give me a second. Perfect. We are going to accept all the recommendations. You have the option to reject it if you want to, okay? And then another thing that is pretty cool is access control. Here, you can decide what are the filters that you're going to apply to your data asset in order to get consumed. So for example, I'm applying a filter by row. So category, I put equals to sneakers. Okay, so my consumers, the consumer of this data asset, they're going to be able just to see the category sneakers, okay? And then data quality scores. I know that I have been talking a lot about this, but now you can see it. You have the general quality scores, and also you have the scores by rules. And also here you can see how the quality score change in a period of time, okay? My favorite, Lineage, okay? You have a Lineage diagram there, okay, in which you can see the 3 assets that we use as a source for this asset, okay? You can see the glue job that we use in the middle in order to merge all those assets, okay? And also you have the data, you can see the data set that we create using that job. And then you can see how that asset got cataloged in DataZone or SageMaker catalog. Okay? Once I have all the information that I need, I'm going to publish the data asset. Okay? When I click publish is when that asset can be searched or can be can be searched by the rest of the company. Okay? So perfect. Now it's published. Now everybody can search for that asset. Okay? Let's switch to Susan. Okay? Let's see the consumer experience. Okay? Let's see how she searched for a data asset. Now we are looking at Susan. We select our project, in this case, marketing, and we're going to select the data catalog part. You have the option to search, okay? But I want to show you the more detailed search. So here you have the list of all the assets available, and you have all the filters that you have available. So you can filter also by glossary terms. So this is very powerful because when you assign a glossary terms to your data asset, okay, you are going to be able to filter the search of that data asset by that glossary term, okay? Perfect. So I filter by glue table, okay? I have 4 results. I'm going to select total revenue, the asset that was documented by Leonard. Okay, you can see all the information here. You can see the data quality scores. You can see the lineage, again, but in this case, as a consumer. So I love it. I want to consume it. This is the one. I'm going to send an access request to the owner, in this case, Leonard. Okay? I'm going to put there the reason why I'm subscribing. Okay? And I'm going to send the request. So what happened now is we're going to switch back to the producer because I want to show you how the approval process looks like. Okay? So we go back to the producer project, in this case, sales, okay, as Leonardo. And we are going to select our catalog again, okay? And you have a category called subscription request. Now you can see the subscription request. The only thing that I have to do is go and approve it, okay? You have all the meta information related to the request, and you can decide if you want to give full access or you want to apply a filter. So in this case, we are going to apply the filter that we create before. So Susan is going to be able just to see records under the sneaker category, okay? Perfect, approve it. Very simple process. Let's go back to Susan. I'm going to show you how she consumes that data asset. Okay, back to the marketing project. If we go to data, okay, and we go to the asset section, and we go to the subscribe tab, you're going to see my asset, okay? I click there, the same information that I showed you before, but now I have the option to select, use a Jupyter notebook to consume my data, or to use a SQL interface to consume my data. In this case, I'm using the SQL interface to make the example simpler. And now you can see that we are able to see just the sneaker, the records with the sneaker category. Okay? Perfect. That's all that I have. Now we have one of our customers that they already implement this, and they want to share with you guys their learnings.
My name is Hari Mupanani. I lead the data platforms for Bristol Myers Squibb. The people who may not be familiar with BMS, it's a biopharmaceutical company dedicated to discovering, developing, and delivering innovative medicines to the patients to prevail over the serious illness. Today, I'm thrilled to share our real-world experience and the journey that we had with DataZone. We've been part of this journey since this product was out in the preview, at least a year and a half ago, I think. And I'm not sure whether it's metrically correct or not, we may be the first one went to GA with a production with this product. So how do we run a real-time data governance at BMS? Before we go to a data governance topic, I would say why data governance we have to do for data. In our organization at BMS, AI is transforming every aspect of our business, right? And it is transforming, the momentum is gaining day by day. There is more AI activity is happening in this floor. For example, 100% of our small molecule experiments today now begins with in silico screening. That means the computer model decides what molecule or what experiment we wanted to take it further, right? That's 100% of them. And in the large molecule side, we do it 25% of all the molecule experimentation runs through AI. So, however, when you talk about the AI, there is a saying goes like, AI is good as its data it relies on. So it's really, really important for us to govern the data so that we can get the better accuracy on the AI front. That's why the AI governance is really, really important. So most of the time when we talk about this word governance, it's obviously, it gets associated with bureaucracy or slowness, that it doesn't allow us to move forward faster in this thing. At BMS, we really want to reimagine that concept and put the customer as the center of everything, through that lens, understand what true governance means to us. What is that governance they would be looking for? What are the key areas we should be governing for? So these are the three key pillars that we came through our journey for last 2 years, working with the consumer day in and day out. The consumer is like now, in the past, we had a centralized data lake and we have customers. There is a point-to-point data delivery usually happens. But when the computational scientists have grown in numbers, what's really happened, the hungry for data has grown also higher. So the finding the data is the biggest challenge for them today, right? It's not easy to find the data. If they find the data, they do not know how to get the access to the data. Can they understand the data? All this question comes up. So it's really important in the world of AI, we need to ensure that we have a business catalog that captures sufficient amount of metadata that makes the data findable and understandable and trustworthy. That's really, really important. So we spend a lot of time governing that space. And the second one is self-services. Now I found the data. How do I consume the data? What is the compute I can get instantly so that I can operate on the data, run the machine learnings and other. This is on the consumer side of the story. When it comes to the producer would ask, hey, there is a request came from the consumer to produce a new data product. Can I have a compute that I can produce a data, right? For producing an infrastructure like this would take, at least in the past, 2 years ago, it takes at least 6 weeks for us to provision an account and infrastructure for them. So today, through this enablement, we were able to deliver the infrastructure to producers and consumer alike in less than 15 minutes. Through control plane along with data zone behind the scene. And the third one is about data access. So most of the data, if you look at it today, everything is like if you need a data, you need to subscribe to it. When you subscribe, it always goes through a governance process. Somebody has to look and approve. Somebody has to give you an access and apply the policy on S3 bucket. There's a host of things happens behind the scene. And every time people find the data, have the compute, but cannot get certain things approved on time. That's the biggest challenge for us today, right? So what we put a governance to understand that pain points around the area, how do we remove those obstacles in that space. But the two things that we noticed in that space, the one thing was, if you look at it, the data, every producer wanted to govern the data, they want to approve every request. But if you truly ask them a question, is that really needed? But you will find more than 60% of the assets doesn't need to be governed. They need to be audited. They need to know who is using it, but they really don't want to approve it. For example, you take a lot of external data that comes out, the internal data that we provide, which doesn't contain any PHI or PII data. Why do you govern all of them, right? You need to know who is using it, but you really don't have to govern. That's one side of a story. Another side of a story is the consumer asks, give me all the data. That is also not the right question, right? So how do we address that problem? So we look at it on the other side of a story and talk to the producers and say, what is the licensing term? What is the contractual that exists? So based on that, only govern the areas that is really need to be governed for intellectual properties, PHI, PII, regulations, compliance, this area. Rest everything a little bit open up so that we can have a faster innovation happening in the field, right? That is why we govern this area. And this is, speaking in forums, it would take a minute or two to talk about. It's a journey, right? It's a 2 years journey. It does not solve by a technology. It is a combination of a culture. You need to build a data culture, a strong culture, and the culture associated with the people and processes and the technology. This combination is where you get the success, right? So I'll show you. I've spoken about a little bit of people and process, but as I go further in the slide, I should be able to show you how would we achieve. This is our greenfield data mesh architecture that we came up 1.5 years ago, along with data zone in the middle. So if you look at it, let me talk about the middle part, which is managed by the central team like us, right? The central team like us. So our primary objective on the central hub is to build standardization. What is the standardized process that producer needs to do, consumer needs to do? What is the best practice for producing and publishing the data and consuming the data? And also we manage the business catalog for the entire company. And also we create a single pane of glass for all the governance workflows, right? And also we provide a lot of accelerators in the middle that makes our life for producers and consumers fairly simple, right? That is the central team do. If you look at it on the left side of the board, it's a producer who stays very closer to the business and who understands the data really, really well. And they work with 400 plus applications on it and ingest those data into it and convert them into a data product that's usable for this thing. But we have one guiding principle on the producer side. We offer choice, we offer flexibility. You might ask, why? Why don't you standardize everything? Our data is heterogeneous, right? It is no longer all tables that we have. We have sequences, we have images, we have x-rays coming in, so many type of data that is coming in. We have to govern them differently. You cannot give them a set of tools that works for everything. So what we give them is a single click infrastructure provisioning, which all baseline scaffolding for data pipeline exists, but allow them to bring their own tools to do further processing of the data. So this is the one I said, and the people and process and the technology enablement, where you go to our custom cloud portal where you can say, I'm a producer, I want to produce this data. On a click of a button, in 15 minutes, you will be provisioned the baseline component for you on the producer side. So now look at the consumer side. The principle that we use on the consumer side is a little different. Let's say meet them where they are. You cannot ask them to use the tools of your choice. We tend to fail a lot in that space. If you go and say somebody is using a SageMaker and move away to go to Domino and other, you can't do it. So you have to meet them where they are. So it's really, really important principle. So that's why I said the central team's job is to make sure that they provision the infrastructure that is required, and build the accelerator that is required as well as part of the process and meet them where they are. In that space also, we have two kind of a persona types. One persona type is only query only. They explore the data and they download the data and they go into their on-prem or SuperPod, NVIDIA SuperPod hosted locally, and go and execute their machine learning workloads and everything. But there are others who take the data in real time and use SageMaker and AWS services and others too. So when somebody is doing query only, we provision one account per domain that is highly shareable for every query only consumers. And if there are CPU intensive or GPU intensive workloads are coming, we provision them as separate account, because we really need to run our FinOps accurately, because we need to know where we are spending money. So that is really important on both consumers and the producer side of the story. And that's why we have one consumer to 100 consumers, but still we were able to manage the number of accounts we proliferate and manage them. But if you look at it, the diagram maybe looks simpler, but it is really, really powerful. There is combination of a data zone and the custom engineering proprietary developed within the BMS is enabling the entire ecosystem experience, frictionless. So we talked about the business glossary. That is the topic of the today. I really want to spend a few minutes on this one, how we do it, right? So you cannot from the enterprise say you were able to govern a business catalog from one place. One person can do everything of it. It's not possible. So the central team There are requirements like regulatory, compliance, privacy, residency, and these things. Those are all horizontal organizations. Say that stamp, they have their own metadata coming. But true discovery, when I search for something, the true discovery happens from the metadata that is sourced from the local domain, which enterprise cannot dictate. If you dictate, that's not searchable because nobody has that kind of a domain knowledge across the company. It's not possible. So you have to federate this responsibility back to your domain team. So the domain team owns the discovery part of it. For example, you bring in a biomarker assay data. Then you need to have what patient cohort it came from, what study it belongs to, what indication it was, what demography it belongs to. All those information, only the people who are close to the data can provide that information. So that's why it's really important to encourage the data owners to own that part rather than enterprise owning it. We own what is, we call it as, anything related horizontal organization that governs and protects the data around it. But not every data has to go through the maturity cycle of every horizontal organization. So we create a relaxation on a maturity life cycle where maturity 1, if you have a data that is shared locally within the domain, you have a set of metadata you have to meet. And when it is silver, then you are crossing across more than one business domain, and still it contains some validation information and another. And then you have gold, then you are creating for the entire company, and it has PHI information and a lot of regulatory information and everything. So we build the trust through progressive metadata completion. We never force people to say you always need to stay at the gold level, right? We avoid that. And what did we achieve in last 2 years with Data Zone and the set of AWS services is that we achieved in the past, if you have a data from one domain and there's a data from another domain needs to be brought together to run an analytic, you think about in old data warehouse or the things, it's such a resource intensive task, and a lot of red tape has to be broken to get to this thing. With this Data Zone implementation, we were able to bring in all those accounts into a single marketplace where people can go to one domain and subscribe one data, and go to another domain, subscribe a data, and add it to a one consuming project, able to interact with it. For example, an ADC use case where you have monoclonal antibody coming from the large molecule domain and the cytotoxic payload and the linker payload from small molecule domain, you're able to bring it up and run the analysis instantly, right? So, and the clear business context, which is covered by Luis and Leo, I don't want to cover there. And we are not saying, in the past, we had set of really good data products, but with this customer producer feedback that we run through, we were able to score in less than 18 months, 5x more data quality product for AIs available today from our company. So which is a big milestone achieved. And able to orchestrate the entire line of businesses by domain and isolate them, take them into a FinOps mode where you could clearly understand how the cost operates, how the business value is driven. It's really key for us. And also, we use subscriptions like the subscription workflow in ServiceNow and so many things. With this new release of advanced metadata rules, we are reducing more than 50% of our approval workflow outside of AWS services. And 46 seconds to go. So what we are doing next, we are using Data Zone as a backend and building a lot of front end over it. For example, data APIs. We are building a data API which undergoes auth and auth Z's of Data Zone, able to use that as a backbone and able to deliver a lot of apps over it. So that is something we have done many in the old architecture, but we are doing further more in the processing. And also we are expanding our discovery layer, not only about the data, now about the analytical data products as well. And we are also simplifying data publishing and consumption through GenAI. That means you don't have to scaffold it, you just speak about it, we will be able to generate a code for you. The entire data product line codes for you. And also we are enabling chat with data. We have done many POC, a successful POC over Data Zone to have that done. And finally, we are codifying the access governance in a way that it simplifies the access for everyone. Thanks, everyone. That's a quick lightning talk. But if you have any questions, I'll be away right here. So happy to converse. Thank you.